Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES for 10% off any purchase over $10. If you use that promo code between now and January 28th, you will automatically be entered in a drawing to win a Ravnica Allegiance booster box. Check out the description below for details. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to this special edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch, where we're going to check in on Ravnica Allegiance price trends over the last week. Now, of course, the set officially is released tomorrow, so a lot of inventory is going to be going out into the market. However, there already have been some cards in circulation for almost a week now, because last weekend, of course, was pre-release weekend, and you could also pick up your booster box if you pre-ordered. So there's a number of cards already out there. We're already starting to see some price adjustments. Quickly before we get into them, though, just a fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to support the channel. Our Patreon page is down there. You'll find links to products on Amazon. And finally, Flipside Gaming still offering a promo code for our viewers. But as always, thank you not only to the folks that look at those links, but to each and every one of you. Y'all make the channel what it is, so thank you, and let's get into it. Before we get into our top 10 hot cards and top 10 cold cards, we are going to look at a few cards that are moving that are not found in the actual Ravnica Allegiance booster packs. This includes the Buy a Box promo and a few of the cards from the Planeswalker decks. All the cards in this section are going down. Dovin's Dismissal actually going down $1.57 to $1.32 this week. Nothing unusual here with these Planeswalker deck cards, especially as the product starts to get out there. You're going to find prices begin to normalize, and that's all this is, really. Here's a second example of that with Domri's Notarog going down $1.78 to $1. And as promised, here's the Buy a Box promo, also starting to lose some value as some of these started to get out last weekend into the marketplace. The Haunt of Hightower goes down $3.66 to $12.32. All right, let's move on to the top 10 Ravnica Allegiance cards that have lost value this week. Now remember, going back a week was right before the pre-release. There was still a lot of odd things going on in the market because cards weren't actually available yet. So we're just seeing how everything kind of trended over the course of this past week. Number 10, Prime Speaker Vannifar goes down $1.03 to $14.38. Now, this might be surprising to some people because there's been a lot of interest in this card. There's been a lot of brews. However, she kind of spiked early on. As soon as she showed up, people were like, I need to brew with this card. So they started thinking about picking them up, pre-ordering them, so on. Now that we're actually seeing inventory in the marketplace, it is going down slightly this week. It's not really surprising that we're seeing a little snapback here because the card did have a high price point. However, I have seen a lot of brews with this card. I've seen some Commander brews, obviously, which those will definitely continue on in the coming weeks and months, I have no doubt. I've seen some Modern brews. Don't know if that deck's going to get there or not, but there's at least a lot of interest in the possibility. And finally, I've seen some Standard brews, so there's a lot of crossover appeal. This is a card to watch. This could potentially stabilize relatively quickly, maybe even go up a little bit in the coming weeks, even though more packs are going to be open. Number 9 is Rakdos the Showstopper, down $1.10 to $3.07. So as we're getting closer now to the actual first weekend of Standard, we're starting to see some of these brews solidify. And early on, there were some people thinking about Rakdos brews with this card. But if you look over the last few days, you're not seeing as much of that. You're seeing more Rakdos burn decks. More on that in a few moments. Number 8, Mesmerizing Benthic, down $1.20 to $2.83. This is a really cool mythic, but at the 5 casting cost spot, it's competing with a lot of things right now in these control builds, even things like Teferi, for example. So right now, I don't think people have really wrapped their head around how this is going to fit in. I wouldn't be shocked to see it as a sideboard card, maybe here or there, but I don't think it's going to see a lot of play, and apparently a lot of other people feel that way too as it continues to go down. Number 7 is Sphinx of Foresight, down $1.29 to $2.49. This is a card that was really high when it first came out, and then people again began to brew and tried to wrap their head around where they're actually going to use it. And it turns out they couldn't find as many good places to put it, at least initially, as they maybe hoped. Now, it's still a solid card. I do think it's going to see Standard play. It's just a little soft right now until people can figure out exactly where it's going to fit and in what quantities. Number 6, Lavinia Azorius Renegade goes down $1.50 to $3.15. This is a really interesting sideboard card. You could argue it's going to be better in some ways in formats like Modern or Legacy or Vintage, but you could also argue that there's better ways to hose a lot of decks in those formats than a 2-on-color 2/2 that's 2 different colors. So because of that, I don't know how much faith is in this card right now. It's an interesting commander card if you have play groups that try to abuse mana or play 0 casting cost spells, for example. It could be a sideboard card, at least to some degree in Modern, maybe other formats. However, again, there's not a ton of confidence going into the first weekend here. Number 5, Kaya Orzhov Usurper goes down $1.63 to $7.65. So no surprise, the Planeswalkers are going to be losing value this week. Planeswalkers always start off with a pretty high value attached to them during the pre-release time period, and then as copies get out there and the casual players can get their copies, you'll start to see the value go down. Ultimately, the Planeswalkers that hold their value or go up in value are going to be ones that see standard play or play in other competitive formats. This is a real interesting card, but I haven't seen a lot of brews taking advantage of it yet. Doesn't mean that it won't happen, but at least right now, I don't see a lot of people trying to focus on this card, so I do think it will lose more value. Number 4, Repudiate and Replicate down $1.66 to $1.13. I'm a little surprised this card is losing the value that it is losing because there's a couple of copies of this in a brew that's very interesting and actually very hot right now. Saffron Olive from MTG Goldfish played with the Biogenic Ooze Quasi-Duplicate deck, which looked actually really, really impressive. Can that deck perform well in the first week of Standard, the second week of Standard? Well, time will tell, but at least right now there's a lot of attention on that deck. There's 2 copies of this in the main of the build that he was running, so you might see a quick stabilization on this card within the next 24 or 48 hours. Pay close attention to it. Number 3, Angel of Grace goes down $1.90 to $14.38. This is another mythic that had a lot of attention just from the very beginning, and because of that had a pretty high price point and has for the most part maintained that price point. Ultimately, can it do anything in Standard in the first few weeks? Maybe. I mean, maybe one of those Boros Angel decks will get revitalized with something like this. We'll have to see. Or else maybe a whole new brew altogether. But even if it doesn't pan out in Standard, expect this to have some value going forward for those Commander Tribal Angel players out there. They're going to want to pick this thing up regardless. Number 2, Domri Chaosbringer goes down $1.93 to $13.99. Again, a Planeswalker here losing value, not too surprising, especially one that had a good amount of value during the pre-release time. However, out of the 3 Planeswalkers in this set, this one has been showing up in the most brews, and a lot of that has to do with the confidence that many players have in these Gruul decks that are running around Rhythm of the Wild. And more on that card in a few moments, but yes, this card does show up in some of those brews at least. Number 1 is Dovin Grand Arbiter down $2.40 to $9.99, and it's the third and final Planeswalker losing value, not too surprising. This one feels a little more like Kaya to me. Yes, I do think eventually someone will figure out what to do with this, but I don't know if it's going to be week 1 or week 2 of Standard. So this is a little bit softer right now. Okay, let's move on to the top 10 Ravnica Allegiance cards that have gained value this week. Coming in at number 10, Theater of Horrors of 46 cents to $2.48. And yes, I mentioned earlier, Rakdos has taken a turn in the last few days. When you look at deck brews, they appear to be very burn focused, and this is one of the key cards in those builds. Number 9, Seraph of the Scales goes up 48 cents to $7.99. Another Angel here, this one's actually going up because it did have a lower price point and a little bit less confidence going into this first week. But I will say, I don't know if it's going to see a lot of Standard play. I mean, a 4/3 with Afterlife 2 as being one of its big perks might not be a great card in an environment where you find Lava Coil, right? Aside from that, though, Commander, Angel Tribal players are going to want this no matter what. Number 8 is Rhythm of the Wild, 55 cents to $1.80. Not bad for an uncommon, huh? And of course, we know why this is happening. There's been tons of brews around this card. Gruul Stompy decks that want to push out their stuff with haste or give things the additional +1/+1 counter at times. This is a real solid card for 3 that enables those decks. Now, since it is an uncommon, there's going to be a lot of these entering the pool of cards in the marketplace very, very soon as a lot of packs get open, right? And because of that, this will quickly stabilize, go down in value, even if it does see a fair amount of play this weekend and in coming weeks. Number 7, Smothering Tithe, up 68 cents to $4.39. I have seen some brews with this card, and not just treasure brews. I don't know if they'll get there, but I've seen some other brews trying to use this card. Time will tell if it can actually create a spot for itself in Standard. However, it's also a pretty interesting Commander card regardless. Number 6, Light Up the Stage, up 91 cents to $1.77. Another card that is really, really key in these Rakdos burn decks right now. I do think we're going to see Rakdos burn in the first week of Standard. I think Light Up the Stage and Theater of Horrors are going to be 2 of the key cards in that deck. This one's been jumping a lot actually over the last 24 hours or so you always want to pay attention to cards that jump right before the first weekend of Standard. Number 5, Judith the Scourge Diva, goes up $1.46 to $7.99. Can the Aristocrats deck get there in Standard? There's actually a pretty good Rakdos Aristocrats brew out there that revolves around Judith. We'll have to see how it does week 1. Also, the Command Zone podcast did a whole episode about this card recently, which no doubt brought some Commander attention to it. Number 4, Scargon Hellkite goes up $1.83 to $10.90. This is another one of those cards that had a lot of confidence ever since we first saw it, just simply because generally 5 casting cost 4/4 flyers with haste tend to do pretty well in Standard if you look back in history. So this one, no exception. I think a lot of people just figure they can toss this into various aggro decks, various stompy decks, and it could do some work, and I actually think that's going to be the case. So this goes up a little bit. Depending on how much play this actually sees going forward, this might be a decent price for the card. We'll have to again see how much play it gets in week 1 and week 2. Number 3, Growth Chamber Guardian up $2.35 to $7.72. Another card that we've really liked ever since we first saw it, right? A 2/2 for 2. You can make it bigger. It has adapt 2 for green and 2. But more importantly, whenever this gets 1 or more +1/+1 counters, you get to search up another copy of it from your library, goes to your hand. So you can chain a few of these over the course of the game, and it actually just gives you some nice card advantage, some nice flexibility as the game goes on. And we know the 2-drop has been a weak spot for the green decks previously, so this is a nice way to maybe just reinforce something like a green stompy deck, or maybe even do something completely different. I've seen these in all kinds of brews recently, including the Vannifar brew. Number 2, Biogenic Ooze up $7.56 to $14.44. Wow, okay. So I mentioned earlier Saffron Olive, the Biogenic Ooze deck that plays with Quasi-Duplicate. And yes, that's the reason this is spiking as aggressively as it is spiking. But something to point out, this card is spiking like right now as we speak. When I first put together the slides, I went back and just checked prices again before I started recording. In the last about hour or so since I made the slides originally, this card's gone up over $1. It is spiking in real time, so keep that in mind by the time you go and check the price. Who knows what it will say, but it is going up very aggressively because a lot of people are excited about that deck and what they saw from the gameplay. Number 1, Hydroid Krasis goes up $13.38 this week to $24.95. Wow, that is a spike. Now, I'm going to say this. I do think it's going to see standard play, and I'll tell you where in just a moment. But this was a huge spike over the course of the week, and packs are going to be opened in big quantities starting tomorrow. So I do think this will stabilize and come down in value, at least in the short term. So just be careful. If you want to buy this card, don't overpay for it. Now, with that being said, this will see standard play. I've seen it in the Vannifar brews. I've seen a Gates brew, actually, which was pretty sweet with like Gatebreaker Ram in this as 2 of the main creatures. I don't know if that will get there, but it looked really cool. And aside from that, this could show up maybe in some sideboards and Bant Control style decks or something like that. I haven't seen a ton of that yet in early brews, but it wouldn't shock me if not week 1, week 2, we might see that down the road. So this card will find homes, I have no doubt. The raw power is just too good for it not to. Alright, with that being said, that is our special edition of the Market Watch. Hey, have fun out there this weekend. Hopefully, if you didn't get a chance to go to a pre-release, you can play with the new cards this weekend. Or even if you did, hopefully you get a chance to play with the new cards. But until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page, as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.